matter how many times you study me and don't give me a home, right? So we taking back that concept and saying, guess what? We can talk to each other and quantify the data like they love and crunch the numbers and come up with our own data, right? So we are releasing officially a WeSearch report from Poverty Scholar researchers from the occupied Ohlone Lashan village of Yalamu. That's what this territory is called before the colonizers came in, aka San Francisco. And this is the tent and belonging theft in San Francisco under Mayor London Breed. So I'm going to ask my sister Junebug to read what the SF WeSearch release summary is.
So for the San Francisco WeSearch release summary, since the inauguration of Mayor London Breed, on-house residents of San Francisco have struggled with a series of tent and belonging seizures and police and DPW harassment. The overall attacks on poor and on-house people is a continuation of previous mayoral administration's ongoing attacks on on-house San Francisco residents. What was evident from this WeSearch study is the attacks now include the specific seizure of people's tents, which adds yet another inhumane and violent aspect to the attack on our lives for the sole act of not having access to housing in San Francisco, which is some of the most violent forms of displacement, removal, and evictions of poor and working class families. So the WeSearch process, I think Tiny mentioned it a little bit already. I guess we could go into the demographics. Okay, so let's go to the WeSearch process. Beginning Black August 10th, Roofless Radio, what? WeSearchers, a team of unhoused, working class, very low and no income Black, brown, poor, and First Nations youth and adult poverty scholars, all who have been working and sitting and sleeping and living in and out of housing in San Francisco, conducted interviews and conversations with their communities and families of fellow poverty scholars, and then quantified the data to the following results. And here are the demographics. I'd like to read them. Tiny.
So, you know, we know who we are, right? But the people in power like to hear them quantified in Gregorian numbers. So 65% of us were African descent or mixed African descent. 35% of us were Rasa, First Nations, or other. 30% of us were 65 to 75. 70% of us were 30 to 45. 70% were men, 27% were women, 25% trans and non-gender conforming, 70% were households after displacement from long-time homes and neighborhoods, 80% are living with untreated psychological disabilities, 70% are living with physical disabilities. And I just want to say the piece about that was telling the media, you know, a lot of times they say things, you know, off the record, they say things about us poor folks. I have a poem. You anti-social workers and case manglers call me crazy, lazy, dumb, and a bum. That's because my knowledge don't come from the institution. Part of this whole idea is just because you don't have access to a roof, somehow you now can be called whatever they decide, right? Somehow now you don't, because you don't have the privilege of privacy, they can call you dirty. Well, what we say is, imagine if someone took the roof off of your apartment. Would someone call you dirty? Would someone call you lazy? So it's a really interesting piece about the fact that just because we're on the street with no access to a home, people can call us all kind of names. So the WeSearch finding of poverty scholars were...
Hello? Okay, we back on. All right. Thank you for your special magic. Give it up for our MC, Audrey Candy Corn. What? Woo! Okay. So these findings that we found for WeSearch were 111 tents were seized from on-house residents. From September 7th to October 5th, $16,230 in belongings and medicine were seized and disposed of by DPW and or San Francisco police. Tent, belonging, and medicine seizures resulted in severe illnesses, an emergency room visit, and of unhoused residents of San Francisco. And also, I think there was also somebody that I know that was mentioned by our sister Teresa here around who had also passed out.
And he was a Navy
His name is
SEAL.
Mo, right?
Yeah, Mo, and he was a Navy SEAL.
And he was a Navy SEAL, and he also, and he died out there in pneumonia.
Yeah.
So this is reality. And so I'm gonna hand it back to Sister Tiny about demand and ask based on our research findings and what it is that we are demanding.
So again, we don't just talk about stuff. Us poor people are actually building homefulness, which is a homeless people solution to homelessness in Deep East Wichin, Ohlone land. And again, that's extremely hard because we don't got no money from the man. We don't got philanthropist dollars or government dollars. This is a self-determination. That's where the young folks are in a liberation school. We don't have nobody telling us how we have to operate, but that's a very complicated process, and part of it begins with the redistribution of all this occupied indigenous territory. And that redistribution can happen from people like the mayor, because there's tons of acres of vacant land in this city. Like Uncle Bruce reports for years, who are just sitting there. We could inhabit that land and build our own. So one of the things that we heard, and one of the things that I don't even like to say ask, because how can you keep taking people's enclosures and basically killing them, right? So I would call that a demand. Cease and desist in the taking of our enclosures and belongings. Can I get a witness?
Yeah.
Cease and desist in the taking of our enclosures and belongings. Punto final, that's it. And then the other demand ask is us unhoused people of Ilamu, San Francisco are asking for our own liberated Ohlone Lashan's land so we can build our own self-determination project like homefulness.
There you go, yeah.
Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I kind of want to add a little something to that. Homefulness that we have over in East Oakland is a solution to homelessness that doesn't involve institutionalization or incarceration or criminalization. A lot of laws that we're seeing in place right now, like what happened with Prop Q, and then we're looking at this Senate bill that was also signed in, I believe, by Jerry Brown with Scott Wiener and London Breed working on the conservatorship. These things are actually ways to institutionalize and incarcerate and criminalize folks who are dealing with homelessness. These are not solutions. They sound great on paper when you do the research, you look at the articles and you read it, and it sounds good, right? But then when you look further into it, you realize, no, this is not good. This is an inhumane approach. Taking somebody's tent is an act of cruelty beyond.
Yes.
It's an act of cruelty.
Say
There's
that.
there's nothing compassionate about that. It's an act of genocide. For folks in public office, some are saying that, oh, by letting people have tents, that we're actually enabling them. Excuse
God,
me?
come on.
If you don't have adequate housing for someone and all they have is a tent, then why are you taking that?
Yes.
And in fact, if you are to take it, they actually have to follow a certain protocol, and the police are constantly violating it. The protocol is that they're supposed to give a 24-hour notice. They're actually supposed to provide an alternative adequate housing, and they are just taking people's tents without any type of support, criminalizing folks, ticketing folks. You know, and once again, homeless folks are being scapegoated. Oh, we're the ones who make the street dirty and blah, blah, blah. Well, you know what? No, it's the fact that there's hardly any garbage cans.
Right.
There's the fact that there's no 24-hour public bathrooms.
Yes.
And there's a fact that Jerry Brown did not sign the Assembly Bill 186 to have safe injection sites in San Francisco, and that would also help. These are actual solutions that can be put into place to stop the institutionalization and criminalization of folks who are dealing with homelessness.
Yes.
This has got to end.
Yes.
I do not agree with what the mayor is doing. I do not agree with what Department of Public Works is doing, and I have a lot of questions for the encampment resolution team. There's something on the Department of Homelessness that they're calling themselves the encampment resolution team, and I have questions for them too. We need to sit down and have a meeting. They say when you look up these definitions of all these different laws or propositions or teams that are out here to help folks who are dealing with homelessness, they say that, oh, we're going to work with public officials in the community. I don't see them present here. Where the community? Where are they at? Are the communities really involved in this? Really? Because I'd like to have a meeting right now. I'd like to call out London Breed. I'd like to call out Scott Wiener. I'd like to call out the police chief. I'd like to call out DPW. I'd like to call out the encampment resolution team. I'd like to call them out, aka the tent snatchers. I'd like to call them out. I'd like to also get nonprofit or community-based organizations involved, like Coalition on Homelessness, Hospitality House, Poor Magazine. We're here, we're present. You know what I'm saying? Let's get together and really figure this out. And not most importantly, the experts are those who are experiencing this day in and day out. Those are the experts. What you need to do, senators and assemblies and board of supervisors and mayors and chief of polices and all those other public workers, you need to sit down and listen to the folks who are dealing with homelessness. You need to listen to their voices. You need to actually take into consideration their expertise and stop dehumanizing them.
Yes.
Everyone
Yeah.
deserves to be talked to with dignity. Just because you got a degree does not mean that you actually know what's better for my life.
Yeah.
Okay? The one who's breathing it is the one who's living it, is the one who has the degree.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because guess what? Life is my education, experience is my degree.
Jumba speaks
Yeah.
for me.
And another thing that we need to deal with is this monster in the mission that's happening. That's another thing. We want the monster in the mission. So if you're interested in also getting involved in that, they are going to have a meeting at Mission High School on November 1st. Please show up at 3 o'clock. It is a public hearing. That's at Dolores and 18th Street, November 1st at 3 o'clock. Join the fight to plan for our future, to stop this so we can demand 100% affordable housing. Affordable housing. You know, and that's another thing that London Breed is talking about, all this prevention. Well, guess what? If prevention was in place, we wouldn't need the intervention we need today. Okay? So we need intervention because you neglected, folks. You neglected the housing issue. Let's take it all the way back to the 80s with the Ellis Act evictions and why people were dealing with homelessness and these Band-Aid treatments called the shelter system. When you could have put the funding into actually creating different types of housing models to help folks, not hinder folks.
Yeah.
And then you want to come in and talk about, well, one of my solutions for this would actually be to improve the housing stock. We need to build more housing stock so we can help our low-income and middle-class folks. Constantly, you know, no, that is not a solution. You're listening to developers. You're listening to other people who are not even from the city, who are putting money in places that are criminalizing folks who are living in the city, breathing in the city, and are out here dying in the city, and this has got to stop.
Yeah.
Give it up to Jumbo. Now, I know that you wanted to say one thing, and I want to make sure that you scholars, because we're going to ask you to come up and say a little bit too. So go ahead.
Folks, I'm not going to take up any more of your time because I've talked to you guys. Mayor Breed,
Mayor Breed.
I am your choice for the Mental Health Board. Recognize these people. Board of Supervisors, recognize these people. They are the ones that got you in office. They are the ones who you are supposed to serve. I am open at any time, Mayor Breed, to sit down and talk with you on this issue. I will be in touch with you as soon as possible. Thank you, folks, and we're going to get something done, I guarantee it, because we work strong together.
All right, so we're going to bring up youth scholars from Decolonized Academy. Kimo and Solomon and Zaire and Zion and Amir. Kimo, you want to start it out? Just talk a little bit about what we do and what you learn.
And what do you think about what's happening?
Hello, my name's Kimo. I'm a resident of San Francisco for about 10 years now. I experienced the homelessness here as a young child, around 6, and the homeless shelters are quite they're interesting. They only can house enough people. They don't make enough of them. A lot of people have to like move out of the city just to go to another shelter, or they have to move out the city completely out into San Jose, Stockton, and they don't even have shelters out in Stockton or a lot of them out in San Jose. So what people have to face is the suffering of having to buy a tent and having to live without plumbing, live without functioning water, having to go to public water fountains, having to use public bathrooms, having to use the public streets to live on, and they're constantly being harassed by police and DPW, and it's a real problem because there's nothing they can do. They're caught in the middle of a politics war with the people and the politics and people. The poor people are caught in that, and we're just trying to do our best as youth poverty scholars to educate ourselves to advance the fighting against poverty and the struggle of the oppression that comes with gentrification and what politics are perpetrating.
Run on chemo! Run on chemo!
Hi, my name is Zaire.
Zaire!
I am a youth poverty scholar of Decolonized Academy. We go to a school where we learn about the struggle and we know how the people are feeling. They're homeless and they have no shelter. They don't understand. Like Tiny said, if they ripped off a roof from your head, oh, you would act the same way as a homeless person did. But you gonna say, oh, well, we gotta move you out, we gotta do this, and they act like they're gonna make shelters for the people when they're actually not. It has bed bugs and diseases. They don't clean them, and all I want to say is I'm from Decolonized Academy, and we're doing the protest.
Right on, brother! Brother Zaire!
I am Amir Cornish. I'm the son of this brother right here. And I'm not from here, I'm from West Oakland. And I gotta tell you, I was homeless too with my family. And I don't know how it feels to live in a tent. But I just want to say this to please. I'm not different from you. I'm the same person you are.
Yes!
If you take my tent, I will be mad. I'll be fucked up in the mind. And I need you, if you want to take my tent, I need you to help me find a place to live.
Yes! That's right, brother!
I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm trying to live life. I'm trying to find a job.
Right.
And police, you need to help the community. You're trying to get money, but we not money. We are human beings on the street. And God created us differently.
Right on, Amir! Come on, Solomon!
All right. My name's Solomon. I'm a poverty scholar at Decolonized Academy, and I just want to talk about a little bit about what we do over there. No, it's not like all the other man school where they teach you Columbus came to America first, and he was peace with the Indians, and he treated them well, and then no. That ain't how it went down. It don't lie to you. It tells you straight up the truth. Okay. All right, and so I just want to talk a little bit about London Breed, about how she wants to solve the homeless problem by taking away their only solution to the homeless, the tents. You know, what else are they gonna sleep on? Benches, streets, in front of doors where they can just get criminalized? Exactly. And what are they gonna do for food? You know, the soup. You only eat soup for so long before you have to, you know, go to the bathroom. And where you gonna go to the bathroom at? Yeah.
Right on, Solomon! Zion! Come on, sister!
Hello, my name is Zion. I'm one of the youth scholars from Decolonized Academy. I have been homeless before, but I haven't had the experience to sleep in a tent. But I do know that it could be very traumatizing, especially for people who doesn't experience this and been trying to make rules that people outside the mayor, or outside this big building, try to make decisions for us when we have to experience these rules that aren't right for us, and instead not talking to the people who actually have to listen to these rules and experience this. And yeah.
All right, Zion.
Zion. Yeah, she said in How to Think. We're going to pass it back to Lisa Tiny Gray.
Okay, so this is also a speak out. I know I just want to give love to Teresa and Junebug and all the cats, but also if anyone else wants to jump on this mic before we close out around the work that's